Let's see. Silent mode on my phone is activated. Will, we're ready to go.
All right, let's light this candle, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I love your shirt. Let me just get that out of the way.
Truth is poetry. People hate poetry.
You know, one of my favorite authors, Cormac McCarthy, he said, if poets had something to say, they should just say it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't make me interpret what his meanings are. Just spit it out, dude.
You got something to say, man? Let's hear it.
Yeah,
And don't
yeah,
flower it up and church it
yeah,
up.
yeah. Exactly.
I love that background too. Let's get that out of the way. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, thank you. That's one of my favorite views.
Is that your lake or is that just?
Yep, that is. There's no way to say this humbly, but that's my backyard.
You son of, you big time this, ain't you?
Not trying to. You asked, brother. You asked. Okay.
I had that coming. Thank you to the two folks watching us live. Please like that share button. I know this is an unusual time, but I believe you are flying Monday morning, are you not?
I am. Yes, I will be out there doing my thing.
Yeah.
I see John Shriver's on from Yukon, Oklahoma. Coin number 1919. What's this coin number thing, brother?
I couldn't wait for you to ask me, my dear friend.
I finally found mine too here. It was buried in all my remodeling here.
The keys to the kingdom, my friend. That's what's going to get you inside the training vault where we have everything to keep you and your family safer. White belt to blue belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with John Jacques Machado. One of his black belts, I should say, Christian Durham Clinch MMA. We got we got Dr. Dan Olesnicki teaching SWAT medicine. We've got the Gospel Atomic Athlete teaching you fitness. We've got Michael Janich with Edge Weapons teaching you all that. We've got everything and anything to keep you and your family safer with some preparedness series from your old pal Rich Brown, Mr. Mike Seeklander, walking you through everything on the handgun, rifle. Oh, look at that, the microphone.
Oh,
live television, folks.
I'm telling you right there. Okay, take two.
Take two. Now, so got everything in the training vault. Please take advantage of it. 14-day free test drive. Alan Kelly is on. What does he say?
Good to see you, brother. Dos Equis. All right.
Will Rose is also. Good evening, Richard. Will from Missouri. Coin number 2269. Our old pal, Dr. T.C. Fuller. He is home and safe from in South Carolina, back from San Francisco. Bob Bill is on. Says, hey, guys, Bob and Heather are here. Good Heather, I hope you're doing well. Need to get out there and see you guys in the beautiful state of Montana. Hopefully do that real soon with my bride, the lovely and ever radishing Miss Lisa. Got a great show for you, Will. Yeah. Will's going to take us through some economic stuff, and then Will asked me to point this large forehead of mine at something that the left is doing, and it truly hurt my head today to try to figure it out. But they're playing the long game, guys. God bless them for it, I guess. And they're take no prisoners. So we'll get to that at the end of the show.
So there's I forgot to do the fear greed index on the first slide here. It's at 72. It's been running 79, 78, somewhere in there. It's coming down to 72. I bet it's going to be down even more on Monday because the market went down today. So something to keep in mind. Now we're going to talk about retail sales here. I gotta set the mood here, brother. So give me one moment here. Let's there we go. Little dystopian retail background.
Holy cow.
I had to dig this out of the archives.
I think that's the mall you and I used to hang out in the 80s.
Yeah, the Orange Julius was right over there.
That's right. They had the best corn dogs, I tell you.
Yeah, they did. So, all right. So retail sales. So this is your regular folks, and the first thing we want to take care of here is they dropped again. Okay. So the other thing we need to put out there, and always keep in mind with these retail sales reports, is they are unadjusted for inflation. So these are nominal numbers in the terms. Okay, real means adjusted for inflation. So these are nominal numbers. So we're gonna dig into that a little bit. Okay. So the value of retail purchases unadjusted for inflation increased 0.6% from January. This is the February report that just came out. After a downward revision. Remember, we've talked a lot about revisions lately, Rich, with unemployment, GDP, a lot of different things. We see these revisions. People react to the initial report. They don't look at the revisions. However, Wall Street's starting to take notice of these revisions because it's getting to the point of just ridiculousness.
They ignore them to their detriment, my dear friend.
Yes, they do. But they're starting to catch on. So we'll see how things go. You'll notice that this 0.6 increase excludes cars, which were half of that.
Oh, really?
Okay, so now that's part of the real number. It's there. It's not a made up number. It's not fake news or anything like that. However, when half of it is cars, if people are getting squeezed, there you go. Okay, so it's just a data point. It's a piece of the puzzle, if you will.
Okay.
And let's bear in mind the current CPI is running month over month 0.4%.
Mm.
So if you've got a nominal 0.6% increase and CPI is running 0.4, it means a 0.2% increase. That means a 2.4% annualized increase in retail sales. That's not going to set the world on fire, and that is not going to make your employees happy when you can't give them a pay raise in this environment.
No.
So, and when the employees can't get that pay raise with gas prices going up and everything else going up, so let's think about the CPI for a moment here. So CPI looks at 80,000 different things. Remember we talked about Trueflation week before last, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Well, CPI looks at 80,000 things. Well, most of us buy the same things week in, week out. Food, energy are the big ones, right? So if you see a big decrease in, let's say, washers and dryers, men's underwear, whatever, right? Well, that moves the CPI number. Everything's weighted within there, but those things move the CPI number. But if you're not buying those things that month, that didn't happen for you.
I'm glad you mentioned durable goods and gallons of milk and gallons of this, because we've talked about shrinkflation. If you're buying cornflakes every week, and I'm going to tell you just real quick, I know this is anecdotal, but I'm going to encourage you, the listener, or even you, Will, next time you're in the grocery store, they need to reset the racks, because the racks in the cereal aisle, because the boxes of cereal have gotten smaller. Now you've got 6, 8, 10 inches of dead space in there because the boxes are getting smaller. And I noticed it's only on certain aisles where the packaging can shrink. The other parts of the supermarket, they stay relatively the same. And I'm like, man, look at this. What's going on here?
So it's interesting. It's interesting and awesome you brought that up, because I just watched an NPR thing. It was on YouTube. It's like 7 or 8 minutes, and I got to give them props. They did a really good and balanced 7 minutes on inflation. And they interviewed a younger guy who's a teacher somewhere in Michigan, I believe it was. And he was talking about shrinkflation, and he was talking about sauces. He was actually they showed some ranch dressing. And he was talking about the divot in the bottom of the bottle.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, the bottle's the same size. The divot's bigger.
Yeah, so the ounces at the bottom corner are gone from 12 to 10.
Yeah, so people are noticing this, and of course it helps that Biden has been talking about it. So he's doing it for one reason, but the unintended consequence is now more people are noticing, and therefore more people are angry. And when people are angry, they usually don't vote for the incumbent. So he may have wanted to think that through a little better to the best of his ability.
Yeah, probably not a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. So further, this is a Bloomberg article as well. So the so-called control group sales, they're used to calculate the gross domestic product later on. They were unchanged in February after falling in January. Now, this is the part that we always dig into, and it's where they game the numbers out. The measure, which excludes food services, auto dealers, building materials, stores, and gasoline stations, suggests weaker economic activity so far in the first quarter.
Can I ask you a question?
Please, of course.
They game the numbers. Who is producing these metrics?
This one, retail sales. This is Bureau of Labor Statistics.
And
about
they fall
90%.
they fall under what?
Executive branch.
Okay, that's my point.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Want to borrow? I got a tinfoil hat right down here. You want to borrow it? It's got little horns that come out the side.
I think I need my own.
If you go buy a roll of aluminum foil, there's multiple hats in every box.
Oh, really? Okay.
I'm just saying. I mean, it's now there's been some shrinkflation there. You only get like 10 hats out of there now.
That's probably true.
Yeah. So what we're seeing here is things are slowing down, and this is CPI is a lagging indicator. Retail is a lagging indicator. It doesn't lag as bad, but we're still looking at the past, right? So this is what we need to bear in mind. Unfortunately, this is what all the Federal Reserve, Treasury, everybody looks at these lagging indicators. So, it's like trying to drive down the road, only looking in the rearview mirror.
Right.
Okay. So if we can jump on the next one here, brother.
Of course.
All right. So what's this one say, man?
Under the surface, Thursday's report points to a consumers that's growing more discerning as the labor market starts to cool somewhat. Credit access becomes more limited and higher prices continue to bite.
Okay, so this is stuff we've been talking about for a number of months, right? So consumers growing more discerning. They're also trading down. They're going from, instead of going to Target, they're going to Walmart. Instead of Walmart, they're going to the dollar stores. Okay,
But
that
couldn't that
part's
be the
happening.
early stages of deflation, Will?
Yeah, that's the net effect of it. Yes,
Okay, yeah.
for sure. And the labor market is starting to cool as we've seen the jobs numbers have been gamed out, of course, and we're also seeing that the average hourly earnings are going down and the number of average hours worked are going down. So you're getting a double whammy there. And even if people are getting a raise in some months, they're getting an hourly pay raise, but their hours are going down. They're not getting that overtime now. So yeah, I'm going to give you a $2 an hour raise, but instead of working mandatory 50-hour weeks, now you're down to 42s.
Right.
And that's a double whammy because anything over 40 is time and a half, right? So we're seeing a lot of that. That's the start of the turn. That's been going on slowly for months. And we know things happen slowly and then all at once.
That's correct.
Credit access becomes more limited. We've talked about that with the SLOOPS, Senior Loan Officer Survey. That's been months now. That's been tightening. It takes a long time for that to work its way all the way through. We've also seen how credit card balances are up. Got to be pushing 1.4 trillion by now.
Don't you think credit is going to become more limited once the buy now, pay later is started reporting on the FICO? Because it's going to be like, oh man, this guy has a lot more debt to earning ratio, and
yep,
I don't know.
Absolutely, yep. It's and a lot of people are going to get a real rude surprise because suddenly, not only are the credit card companies and the banks going to go, whoa, you got an extra $15,000 worth out here on buy now, pay later, but also the BNPL folks, because they report this now, they're going to start getting more discerning too, I believe.
Right.
Because they're going to be like, well, hold on. This gets reported, so now other entities are going to restrict this person's access to cash. That restricts our ability to get repaid as well. That's what I think is going to happen. Now we'll see. Could be totally wrong. I'm wrong all the time.
That's a lot of information in just a one sentence. That one run-on sentence.
Yeah, I'm good at that. Illinois public school education. If we can bounce back there for just a second.
Of course. Oh, there's even more?
Yeah, there's even more.
Oh,
higher
God.
prices continue to bite. Now, this is also people running down their COVID savings. Their stimmy checks. A lot of people put that stuff back, right? Well, they're running out now. That also plays into the credit cards going higher. And also, it's one thing for a period of time to be like, yeah, prices are high, but the rate of increase is coming down, right? That's what we see when CPI goes from 9% to 3%. That rate's coming down, but now it's hanging there. And actually, it's creeping back up ever so slightly. That's like a knife in the heart to regular folks who don't have that extra room every month.
Yeah.
As Biden says, and he's right for a lot of people right now, I'll give him this one. They run out of money before they run out of month.
That's true.
And that's real people, and they're going to vote, and they're getting frustrated and angry.
Yeah.
So, what's Alan Kelly say there?
And Bernie Sanders wants a 32-hour work week with no change in pay. What the heck?
Well, if only we get Congress to work 32 hours a week, then maybe something could get done. Maybe up from what the 4 they do now.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, but the scary part is they might get something done. All right, so busy chart here, guys. Let's look at this part here on the right, where I got the red circle. And this is U.S. retail sales missed forecasts. Okay, we saw a big decline. The big decline there you see second from the right is January and then February. Okay, all right, so retail sales are down. That's what you're going to get out of this chart, and you can see the general trend is downward. But here's the real key. If we can go to the next slide.
Okay.
This is from Eurodollar University. They do some great work over there. This is U.S. retail sales. Remember we talked about revisions? The dotted lines in each one of these was the initial number.
Oh, my gosh.
Orange bar is what it was revised to.
Wow.
And so when suddenly
These are significant revisions.
Yes, they are. They are very significant revisions. And you notice not only are they significant revisions, but from the psychological standpoint, they go from positive to negative.
Yeah.
In one case, and from negative to worse negative. So
Okay.
why should we have any faith in this last one that shows it's bouncing back?
Exactly. No. And let me ask you a question now. With
Sure.
retail sales tanking, like we see here in this slide, does it have anything to do with the shipping lanes and the Houthis and costing more per container because they got to go around the horn?
My
Is that driving?
My guess is it might be driving prices up some, and which could have an effect on this, which is a good observation, something to keep an eye on. But I don't know if it's worked its way all the way through the system yet. I'm not sure what the lag is on that. I don't know for sure.
I don't either.
But it's certainly something for us to consider.
Yeah. So. Especially because was it $10,000 more per Connex box?
I don't know the number. I never saw a number on that.
Yeah, I thought we briefed that when it first happened, and because it's anyway.
Yeah, and now I just saw that whatever his name is, the spokesman for the Houthis, basically said, "Yeah, we'll let you for any Russian, Chinese, or ship from a Muslim country. We'll work with you. Anybody else, you're gonna pay us a lot of money if you want to come through here."
Well, I tell you, that's no different than what the early settlers of Tennessee. If you wanted to cross the Appalachians and not get a tomahawk in your wife's forehead, you had to pay a chief coming in. They would give you a slip of paper, and you had 24 hours or 48 hours, whatever the time frame was, to get across the mountain, hand it to the other guy, and say, "Me and my wife and 4 kids are out. We got our mules, and we didn't bring anything extra with us." And you paid your fee, and you got over there. So we've seen people doing this time immemorial.
Yep, and you can look in. I'm sure we can find modern day examples of that all over the world. Argentina, I'm sure, with all the problems they've had, I'm sure there's been examples of that there. And
you want to get out of a traffic stop in Tijuana, pay the guy 20 pesos or whatever.
And I'll tell you what, the trick I learned from a guy was it's a tricky thing asking if there's a bride price for something. But if you simply ask, is this a fine? Is that what is there a fine I need to pay for this? Exactly. And that works out pretty good. I've heard.
I've been told.
Yes. So now we're going to switch from CPI to PPI, Producer Price Index. So this is the inflation that businesses are paying. So this leads PPI leads CPI. So Producer Price Index, business inflation, then they pass it on over time to the consumers. Now, the businesses have eaten a fair amount of this more and more, but they can only do this for so long before they just have to pass it along. And that's just, capitalism at work. They're trying to keep their own sales up. Right. So let's dig into this. And the point of this is look at the actual versus the estimate. So PPI, the top line here, PPI month over month estimate on the far right there was 0.3%, came in double that, 0.6. Now that's 7.2% annualized. Ouch. That's a lot. Yeah. Yeah, them's real numbers right there. Okay. Now we get PPI excluding food and energy. That's your core PPI. Estimate was 0.2, actual 0.3. Now, bear in mind, the Fed is targeting through PCE, personal consumption expenditures. They're targeting a 2% inflation rate. Well, this is 3.6 annualized. So we still got a ways to go, and it's going up. Now, you notice your PPI year over year, because it depends which month you're comparing back to. Because all it does is look back at the previous month a year ago, or they should say the same month a year ago. So it depends what that month did too. You can get base effects on that, okay? Estimate was 1.2, came in at 1.6. That's a 33% miss. That's a real miss, okay? And PPI excluding food and energy, your core now year over year, estimate 1.9, actual 2%. Actually got that one pretty close. Okay, so we have to watch these month over month numbers. They're more volatile than the year over year numbers, but they can also start to show a trend before the year over year numbers change. Does that make sense?
It does, but I think this might be a good point for those that are looking at these PPI numbers month over month and going, okay, why are 2 self-defense middle-aged men telling me about PPI?
Okay, who do you call middle-aged? because I resemble that remark. Okay. Here's the reason why, guys. We want to defend our families. We want to provide for our families, and that's guys and gals both. We're all defenders. We're all American warriors, right? Well, one of the ways we do that is having some idea of what's coming, and we don't want this that's behind us to affect us. So that's everything from understanding what's happening in the economy. I don't care if you're for Team Red or Team Blue. I think they both suck at this point. The idea is to have some idea what's coming so we can better prepare our own situation for our own families, whether that is the obvious stuff with American Warrior Society, all the stuff you mentioned inside the training ball. Also, we've talked food storage, bug out bags. We had Dr. Arthur Bradley on with the EMP stuff.
We need to get him back home, by the way.
Yeah, we do.
Fantastic.
So all these things are part of defending your family. We use the phrase, this is a piece of the puzzle. CPI is a piece of the puzzle for the economic side. Well, all these things are pieces of the puzzle for providing for your family.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
And here endeth the sermon. All right. So this is from Nick T, as he's called. He's Wall Street Journal reporter. He's got the ear. He's got the ear of somebody, or somebody in the Federal Reserve has his ear. He puts out stuff that is very insightful about the Federal Reserve. And this is a chart he put out not too long ago. This is core consumer price index. So this is consumer price index, inflation minus food and energy. This is the core, okay? What we want to look at here, though, and we got 3 lines here. It's kind of busy. I just want to look at the far right-hand side of this, brother. So we got the light blue, medium blue, and dark blue. Light blue is a 3-month change in CPI annualized. So that'd be times 4. You got a 6-month change in CPI annualized times 2, and a 12-month change. So your shorter term numbers are going to change before your longer term numbers do, right? I mean, sorry, not to sound like whatever, like a jerk or anything, but it takes 12 1-month numbers to make a year, right? Same thing, 4 3-month numbers to make a year, and so on. So you start to see these changes in the shorter term numbers before they change the longer term numbers. Is that tracking?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. So you look at our 3-month number. Actually, let's back up. Let's do it backwards. Let's look at our 12-month number, dark line. That's been coming down here for a number of months, correct?
Yeah.
We've seen that in the reports. But look what's happening with our 6-month number. It just crossed over going up on our 12-month number, right? Mm-hmm. So that is going to drag our 12-month number back up. And look at our 3-month number. It's going up even faster than the 6-month number. So that's also going to serve to keep inflation higher, keep it sticky, and maybe even increase. Is that making sense?
Yeah, it's making sense.
Okay.
I'm already thinking what I need to do relative to these numbers. That's where my brain is going.
Yeah, these things are going. Now, bear in mind, this is minus food and energy. So this is one of the ways in the past they've cooked the books to keep inflation numbers low, because they take out these volatile numbers, right? So what this tells me is that your other things are starting to increase. Your durable goods, your cars, right? I mean, cars were half of our retail sales increase, right? Now, that doesn't mean anything if you're not going to go buy a car. Who cares? Right? But it affects these numbers. These numbers affect policymakers. They affect J-Dog over at the Federal Reserve. They affect Janet Yellen over at Treasury, and they sure affect the politicians.
In an election year, even doubly so, perhaps.
Yes, absolutely. So they're going to do what they can to doctor these numbers up and get these numbers down. They're going to lean on other policymakers. Now, here's the thing. J-Dog's walking that line, right? It wasn't too long ago that Wall Street was pricing in 7 rate cuts, 7.25% rate cuts this year, okay? They finally put the crack pipe down, and now they're down to 3 rate cuts this year. I think it's going to be 1 or maybe 2, because J-Dog is stuck. Because in election year, if he does anything to help Biden, he's no longer going to be seen as neutral. And it's well known he doesn't like Trump. Yeah. So he's got to walk a very fine line here, and he could end up in a situation where he's late to changing policy again, just like he was when inflation started. Let's remember, inflation was hitting 7.
Transitory.
It was transitory, right? Yeah, big time air quotes on that. But he was still doing quantitative easing, printing money when inflation was going up through 7% on its way to 9. They were very late to that switch.
And now
If
we're
he's
on
late,
QT. And how long have we been doing quantitative tightening?
oh gosh, well over a year,
Yeah.
2 years maybe. And that's, that's an insidious one that people don't feel out here. Banks feel it, but regular people don't feel it directly. We feel interest rates. We see that. We understand that. The public understands that. Quantitative tightening, it really affects the banks.
Yeah.
So,
and Dr. Fuller says J-Dog is Jerome Powell, right? The chairman of the Federal Reserve. That's correct. We're on that level with him.
Yeah. I got him right here. It's in my phone. It's J-Dog when I, when he calls. So this is where we're at with CPI. The short-term numbers are moving upward, and that's going to drag your 12-month number up. And people feel the month to month when they go buy whatever they're going to buy. This is core, so minus food and energy. They're going to feel it. Now, oil just broke its way back through 80 a barrel again because the Saudis extended their production cut through June. And the guess is they're going to cut it again after that. That's just a guess at this point. But
are they picking up the phone when Biden calls anymore? Because this is something, again, that the media really isn't talking about. When any former president used to call since probably the 1930s, they're picking up the damn phone immediately. And now, for the first time that I'm aware of, the 46th president can't get them on the damn telephone.
Here's my guess. If they were picking up the phone, the media would be hyping that up.
Yeah, true.
So the fact that we're not hearing about it probably is your answer.
Yeah, okay.
Be my guess. So the Saudis have also learned this is a great way to manipulate our policies and what happens within the United States. Also, from a strictly business standpoint, oil producers get to see the lead of all of this because the oil companies order the oil, buy the oil, right? But they're seeing what's happening at the pump.
Yeah.
Right. So this is what the Saudis are doing, I view as a very leading indicator because they're looking months and months out for these production cuts and to change production of oil refinery or oil pumping. I'm guessing it's not just flipping a switch. It's going to take a long time, right? So this is a real commitment by them to do this. And they need, I believe the number was $80 a barrel just to sustain all their social programs in Saudi. So they have a vested interest in keeping those oil prices up.
And they're building that giant city out in the middle of the desert, man. I still don't know what the hell that's all about. But what do you say? What do you take on Ted's comment, if you would, please?
Yellen, this is Janet Yellen, Secretary of Treasury, former Federal Reserve chairperson. Yellen says she was wrong, saying transitory inflation. I am suspicious on why now. That's a really good suspicion. There's a guy named Jim Bianco who came up with a saying that I really like to use. Why am I hearing or seeing this now? And my guess is she's framing it so that if things get crazy again, she's like, wash my hands of that.
Yeah, I apologize for that, remember?
Yeah. It's J-Dog over there,
Yeah.
So
Pat Cahill, as always, says working our booth at a gun show, but it's slow, so I can join you for a bit. Coin number 2446.
Glad to have you, brother.
What's this Dollar Tree thing?
Okay. All right. So Dollar Tree, they're having issues. Okay. Now Dollar Tree also owns Family Dollar. So
you mean $1.25 tree?
$1.25 tree. Exactly. So Dollar Tree posts a quarterly loss, incurs a $1 billion in charges on store closure plans. Okay. So you want to read through this one, brother?
The Dollar Tree reported a net loss of $1.7 billion or $7.85 per share in the fourth quarter, compared with a year ago profit of $452 million or $2 basically per share. The company said it also took a $594 million charge for a portfolio optimization review and $950 million in other asset impairment charges. What does all that mean?
All right, so let's dig into this. So you got Dollar Tree. Can you bring the slide back up, brother? Because my memory isn't what it used to be. All right.
That's why I called you middle-aged right there, Will.
Hey, I never said I resented it. I said resembled it.
You were trying to make it fake news, though, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. Yeah. Okay, so moving right along. So they reported a $1.7 billion losses. I'm going to round these numbers, guys. Okay. compared with a year ago profit of 450 million. So they swung from 450 million profit to a 1.7 billion dollar loss. That's real money, even with interest rates where they are. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let's dig into this other part though. So they took a total of 1.6, we'll round it up, $1.6 billion in charges here. Okay.
Mm.
But they lost 1.7. So that means their actual operation still lost $100 million.
Yeah.
That's what I get out of that. Okay. So they're going to close 1,000 stores. That's their plan.
So that's one county in Tennessee, right?
I was going to say there's 83,000 in Tennessee, so 1,000 is no big deal. But
Exactly.
you're about right. And I'm from Iowa originally, and so it's between Tennessee and Iowa. It's like 2 stores a county.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, this is your, these are the people when Walmart went down to the dollar stores, and it's people who were at dollar store socioeconomic level who are struggling. And what they also said in this earnings report, I wasn't going to PowerPoint you guys to death. What they saw is they're seeing almost as many visits per consumer, but less money spent each time. Mm. Now, when they do that, that's over a monthly or quarterly basis. So what this tells me is people are, I'm reading between the lines here. Okay. I'm wondering if more people are living paycheck to paycheck. So they go back more often and spend smaller dollar amounts versus going once a month and stocking up. That's my guess. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it's just that. So I'm trying to read the tea leaves in this. Don't know. We'll watch and see on this one. It's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out. Let's remember, it wasn't too long ago, Dollar Tree, I think it was last fall, took a big hit because they took $1 billion charge to increase store security because of retail theft.
Yeah.
So now they just ate another 1.7 billion on top of that. Pretty soon we're going to be talking about real money.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right. So we talked about Evergrande. We started talking about Evergrande, what, 2 years ago?
At least.
All right. So Country Garden misses a yuan bond payment for the first time. Now, this is significant because Chinese company issued bonds 2 ways. That's dollar denominated, which is foreigners, and yuan denominated, which are internal, domestic Chinese bonds. Okay. You want to read this one off for me?
Yeah. Sales recovery has fallen short of expectations, so fund allocation remains under pressure. Close quote. Country Garden said in a statement, quote, the company will make all efforts possible to raise cash during the grace period, including through sales, asset disposal, and expenditure cuts. Close quotes. Country Garden roiled, thank you. Yeah. Markets when it defaulted on its dollar debt, in October, but has so far managed to avoid doing so on its local current obligations.
So let's unpack this a little bit. So sales recovery has fallen short. Okay. They have a youth unemployment problem. Also, they're having economic problems. Chinese stock market is down something like 57% in the last couple of years, 3 years maybe. Now, that's from a high post-COVID when everything was going crazy, right? But that's still what they're feeling. Absolutely.
If we see retail sales fall in the United States, am I not seeing a blowback on the Chinese economy?
Boom, look at you go, brother. It's all interconnected, right? Mm-hmm. And then what does that mean if we see less stuff coming out of China? China is deflationary to the rest of the world, right?
Exactly.
So that's when those manufacturing plants come back here to the U.S., it's easy, and I agree to cheer, hey, American workers getting jobs. That's inflationary. Mm-hmm. So this is think about when globalization started and prices dropped. That was everything flowing one way. Now it's coming back to nearshoring, friendshoring, and reshoring stuff here to America. So that has inflationary pressures here that I don't think are going to go away anytime soon.
I think you're right.
I think we're in for years of relatively elevated inflation. So be ready for that. Now, the good news is they're going to keep interest rates higher for that. So those of us who put money into CDs, treasuries, things like that, we're going to do better.
Yeah.
Also puts a lot of pressure on
because you've been taking a bloodbath on CDs for years and years and years.
And now, of course, the other part of that pressure is the government's got to finance that $34.5 trillion at higher rates. So now you got a yin and yang there too. So we got a lot of opposing forces in the world. Back to Country Garden here. So they're going to raise cash during the grace period. Grace period is 30 days. So when the coupon payment was due, there's a 30-day grace period before they technically go into default. So during that time, they're going to sell stuff off and they're going to get rid of assets. So they're going to try and like run a fire sale on a bunch of apartments, I'm guessing. Okay. And they're going to try and sell off some other assets, maybe some machinery, take your pick, and expenditure cuts. Well, that's layoffs.
Yeah.
Right. So the layoffs aren't going to have enough effect quickly. That's more to keep some bank happy so they don't get foreclosed on. And looking back, they already defaulted on their dollar debt back in October. This is the same path Evergrande went down.
Look what Bob is saying there. Can you discuss that?
Sure. China always has Taiwan to take over and squeeze some cash out of. Boy.
No tinfoil hat required on that one.
Yep. There's just a lot of with that one. Yeah.
But that's at the, you know, like we said before, that if there's ever been a great time to do it, it's this year. We're as distracted as we can be.
Yep.
Regional conflict all over the world, an election year, you know.
And if I grab my tinfoil hat, you know, AT&T just went down. That affected 911 services. United Healthcare got hacked. They couldn't process insurance payments for well over a week.
90
right? To the point. Good.
No, I was going to say, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Will. I was just going to say, you know, when I think of Bob's comment there, I knew 60-70% of all semiconductors were coming out of TSMC, out of Taiwan. I didn't realize that advanced semiconductor chips, 90% market share. 90% of global market share for advanced semiconductors are produced in Taiwan. So to Bob's point, I mean, that is a big fat golden goose sitting right off the coast, right?
Yep. And it's awesome he brought up the Taiwan thing, because we're seeing more Chinese Coast Guard activity around there, leading some to believe that this may be, instead of a naval, meaning a Navy blockade of Taiwan, it may be a law enforcement blockade of Taiwan, which changes things, because now how does the international community react to that? So we'll see.
And again, we're playing the geopolitics well. We've now stuck a SF group, an American group that they're going to be permanently assigned there. Now, of course, their role is FID, Foreign Internal Defense, but you know, you blockade our troops in, now it's like, oh, now my guys are trapped. So there's a whole lot of ways we can play this one.
Yeah, for sure. I also noticed Bob's got some property for sale there in China. So yeah, I'll send you a message right away on that, Bob. I'll get right on that sometime early in 26. So this is just another pressure point within China. We've talked about the demographics over there. So this is, China is getting squeezed from a lot of different directions right now. They're getting squeezed with lower orders from all over the world. They're trying to figure out this Taiwan thing, how they're going to make that work. They got a lot going on, and their economy is not doing well. So Xi Jinping is famously disconnected. It makes Biden look like a man of the people. So that's not good. So his decisions are not going to be in response to reality. Yeah. So, all right, what do we got next?
Well, what do we got next? My brother sent me this right before we get, and Dr. Fuller says this is not the show after spending 12 hours in an airport. Dr. Fuller's been flying back from San Francisco. He sent me a picture, by the way, of the California, San Francisco Bay Area gas prices. And it was like, I don't know, $5.50, $5.90 a gallon.
Is that in pesos, or is that, I'm sorry.
That's denominated in dollars.
Okay. All right.
So, but anyway, I've got a couple of, let's get this one video.
Let's dig into this.
This is going to, I thought it blew my hair back. It may not affect you, but
let's see what you got.
All right.
You withdraw cash in Australia, the banks want to know why, so let's go tell them the truth.
How much?
Around 6,000. What is it for? My missus thinks I cheated on her last week. She's doing my head in, so I need to like give her some cash and a necklace. She doesn't like flowers. She just likes designer handbags and shit.
Time there?
No worries. I don't know why it's important for the bank to know. It's money.
I'll have to ask.
I've got to go to a beauty salon to bleach my arsehole. Yeah, there we go. There's a bleaching package. And yeah, they said you can make it up to 3 shades lighter. Drugs,
Well,
The devil's lettuce, you would know.
That's what you want me to put jump in on?
I don't deal it personally. I just connect people together.
Whatever you do, it's
Okay.
your business.
What's the money for?
Yeah.
Does it matter?
We need to ask customer why.
I need it for steroids. Summer's coming up, Stereosonic festivals. I need a shred for summer. I mean, if you must know, I'm transitioning to be a woman, so I have to pay for the surgery. It's an expensive surgery. It's not covered on the Medicare. Can you withdraw cash in Australia? The banks want to know.
Isn't that insane?
That is crazy. That reminds me, I think I've told this before on the show, so forgive me, but the one time the Powerball got up to some insane amount. So they're interviewing people standing in line to buy lottery tickets, right? And there's this construction worker in New York City, this bodega, and the reporter who looked like she was 16, so she's probably 25, because I'm getting old. Everybody looks like they're 16 if they're under 30. But she says, what are you going to spend? If you win, what are you going to spend it on? And he goes, hookers and blow. And she's like, oh, back to you, Jim. It was awesome.
But I mean,
So,
this is this is the weird stuff.
Yeah.
What in the hell is it your business? It's my money, and you got to write it down on some form why I'm taking my money out of the bank. It's insane.
Yep. And I've run into that, brother. I've gone to withdraw cash, and what's it for? And I always say none ya.
Yeah. Well, Mark is on. He lives in Australia. He says, this is
Okay.
true. They always ask you what you want your money for. And
Now-
I think it's hilarious. This guy is playing the game with them.
Yeah. Whatever. I mean, say something, just say something that's so out there that they can't, if they respond, you'll be like, hold on a second. I feel like you're using a microaggression here. You know, play the game back on them. So I have a question mark. Here in the States, anything over $10,000 has to be reported to the IRS.
Of course.
Is there a limit like that in Australia, or is this just any cash withdrawal? I assume there's some lower dollar amount of person you can go take out and not have to deal with this. But I'm just curious.
Yeah, if Mark, if you can tell us that would be interesting. And now, the other thing is, and if you're doing it incrementally at 9,900 or 5,000 increments, then you're structuring and
structuring. Yep. And taking out more than $10,000 here in the States, for those of you that are overseas, or if Guile listens later, anything over $10,000 is not illegal. You just has to get reported to the IRS on the form. However, if you structure, as Rich just described, then that is always illegal.
Mm-hmm.
So
think about that for a second.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's boy, just wait till there's a CBDC.
Oh my God. Centralized bank digital currency is I mean, that's when the gate slams shut.
Yep.
I'm telling you. Bob Bill says, what do I need it for? My wallet. I love that.
Yep.
Mark says $9,999. Anything over that? Go.
Okay. All right.
So this next part of the show, man, is where Will turned me loose on this thing. It hurt my head, but I got to be honest with you. I really did approach it objectively. There's something that Will subscribes to, and it's kind of early warning stuff, and it was like flashing red on this being a big deal. And I'm like, oh, maybe it is a big deal. So we're going to get to it in just a second. But before we get into the alleged big deal, we need to take a step back to 1955 and the passage of the Voting Rights Act, which is a good thing. It prohibits racial discrimination in voting. That's the pretext of the Voting Rights Act signed by then President Johnson. The act sought to secure the right to vote for racial minorities throughout the country, especially in the South. And of course, when you look at why, here in the South, we had things like poll tax, where you had to pay a tax to get in, unless your family had paid the poll tax before the Civil War, then you were exempted. Well, guess what? If you were voting before the Civil War, your skin was probably like mine. Okay. So since you didn't have that ability, now you got to pay the tax. And then there was literacy laws. If you couldn't read at X grade level, you couldn't vote. And of course, that disenfranchised poor families like the Browns of Rockwood Mountain, because my dad's the first generation that can read and write. So these kind of laws disenfranchise not only minorities, but also the poor. Okay. So let's be clear about that. So the core provision of the Voting Rights Act was a pre-clearance requirement. So when you see pre-clearance in the law, read approval, right?
Okay.
For certain jurisdictions. And of course, there was 8 states that were affected by this. And they were, guess what? Southern states from implementing any changes affecting voting without first receiving confirmation approval from the U.S. Attorney General, Department of Justice. And if you were in the District of Columbia, which it didn't affect, you would have to go to the U.S. District Court. So that kind of sets the stage. So did the Voting Rights Act work? The answer is a resounding yes. I mean, you can see here from the numbers. African Americans elected to office increased from 3 to 176 in 11 of the former Confederate states. Again, we're talking about the South. Between 1965 and 1985. Nationwide, the number of African Americans elected to office increased from 1,469 in 1970, but just a decade later, we're now at almost 5,000. This affected Hispanics as well as Asian Americans. So we did see that it did work. All was going well with the Voting Rights Act of 1965 until 2013, when something as bizarre happened because Shelby County, Alabama, sued the Department of Justice and said this law is unconstitutional. So let's look into Shelby v. Holder. Of course, we're talking about Shelby County, Alabama versus Eric Holder. This was a landmark SCOTUS decision, man. I really wasn't that aware of it until you forced me to held my nose into the water and made me look at this.
One of the many services I provide here.
Yes, you do, sir. It was a landmark decision back in 2013. SCOTUS decided regarding constitutionality, there was two provisions it did not like. One was that certain states had to get pre-clearance, but what they did vote 5-4 was that Section 4B was unconstitutional because the coverage formula was based on data from 40 years prior. Remember, it was looking back at before the Voting Rights Act and going, you're going to stay on this roll. Well, look, bro, I'm good. What are you still holding me to this terrible standard?
Right.
But they did not strike down Section 5. However, that really did not matter at all because without Section 4B, no jurisdiction would be subjected to the pre-clearance of Section 5. Makes sense so far?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's mud. So everything's going good. So now the stage is set for our little problem here. And the little problem is that the left, and I'm going to take that wherever you want, aims to circumvent Shelby v. Holder with the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And of course, John Lewis has the patina of sainthood because of his relationship to Dr. Martin Luther King, because of his marching through Selma. The man, by all accounts, is a civil rights icon and is an American hero in my book. So let's get that out of the way. And I think that's why they use him in this regard for that Voting Rights Act. Now, it did pass the House in 2021. If the left takes control of the Senate next year, then this thing is going to pass probably incredibly fast. Lindsey Graham, love him or hate him, but here's his opinion on it. He said, quote, it's a rewrite federal law in a fashion that would make it harder for states to implement voter verification. But it's the second piece, if you could discuss that one, Will.
Sure.
The
Public Interest Legal Foundation Litigation Counsel, Maureen Ryden, said the act would, quote, take the states' rights away from them, unquote, and give, quote, tremendous power to partisan Democrats, unquote, and this means the DOJ in this case, over elections.
Yeah.
That right there. There it is.
And we're going to get into, I'm going to go in just a smidge deeper here because the devil's in the details, as with any law, right? That they're trying to get. So what the act is going to do, again, take the John Lewis patina of sainthood away from it and just look at the plain text reading of the law. The act reinstates the federal pre-clearance requirements, period, full stop. You ain't making it in this right here. This shows you the states that were affected by the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and then showing the states that would now be covered if it passed today. So the new formula would include the following: any state that has 15 or more voting rights violations in any 25 years, and then it goes on, voting rights violation. Well, that what led me to believe, what in God's name is a voting rights violation? Because if you get just a couple of these things, your ass is going to be on the list, and your state cannot enact any new election laws or reform or any anything, not even election procedures. I mean, it even says that even if it isn't a law, if it's just a new election procedure you put in place, it has to go through DOJ pre-clearance, which is crazy, right?
It is. Yeah. I mean, that's only going to take what, years?
Oh yeah, it's a nightmare. And so here's the thing. So I looked into what does this John Lewis Voting Rights Act, what's it talking about when it says a voting rights violation? Any of the following: a standing court ruling, one, that has found denial or abridgment of whatever. So I just read down through here the fine print.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this only takes one court ruling in one tiny county with one politically motivated district attorney, just like we've seen over the last couple of years with lawfare.
Uh-huh.
It don't take much.
Right.
I'm going to get in there. I'm going to find one procedural incorrect. I'm going to have a court rule on it in my favor. I get 5 of those in 25 years. My state's now on the docket, and we're going to cram the DOJ down your throat when it comes to voting.
And I can completely see an outfit like the Southern Poverty Law Center flooding the courts with complaint after complaint and sending their operatives out to teach people to manufacture, these abridgments where there wasn't really one. They'll set it up, right? I mean, most of the folks who work at the polling station are volunteers, good people trying to do the right thing for their community, but they're not experts and maybe don't have the mindset of playing defense against somebody who's in there trying to create a problem, right? Yeah. So I can see where it'd be really easy to come up with some of these.
Yeah, I mean, because that's the game book we're playing by now. So if you go down to one of the last things here, you see a settlement or a consent decree will count as a court decision relative to a violation of the Voting Rights Act. You see what I'm saying? So even if you just the all parties settle amicably and walk away, it doesn't matter. You just had a voting rights violation, 4 more, and your state is now basically on probation, double secret probation.
Yes.
So in summary, I'm going to turn it over here to your old pal, Mitch McConnell, because he gives a really great 1-minute synopsis on this thing when they pressed a microphone into his face. But any court will do. Think about that for a second. Okay. More lawfare. It's a suppression of states' rights, obviously. Right?
Hold on a second. Last time states' rights were suppressed, how'd that shake out?
Yeah, a little shooting match, I like to call the War of Secession. So, suppression of states' rights, the act gives more power to the unelected Department of Justice and again, sanctifies and elevates these unelected officials like our attorney generals. The act is a soft overturn of SCOTUS's decision. Okay. It only focuses on, and this is quote right out of every single thing about this is racial groups and language minorities.
Language minorities. And what is a language minority?
It's funny you should ask. And it has provisions in there. Like if 20% of the population speaks another language, the voting has to be done in that language.
Okay.
So, but I don't believe that the term language minorities was in the original 1965 Voting Rights Act. I could be wrong on that. Forgive me for not researching that, but the act was exclusively on census data. Now, this is the interesting thing. Everything I saw in there was, if the census data says 20% or more language minorities, if the census data says this, if the census data, I'm like, What's interesting about that is, if you'll remember from Executive Order number 9, on the very first day that the 46th president took office, remember 12 of his 17 executive orders was a reversal of the Trump things. And this is one of the things he did. Executive Order number 9 revoked the Trump administration's exclusion of undocumented immigrants from the U.S. Census. So Trump said, look,
I'm starting to see some connections here.
It's a long game, bro. It's a play in the long game. Trump comes in and says, look, man, we're not counting undocumented, illegal, whatever you want to call them. We're not counting these people that shouldn't be in our country, that are breaking our American laws to get here. And now we're going to record them in the census. And it has all these other ramifications. Well, Biden says, hey, screw that. Put them on the census data. And of course, the Voting Rights Act says, once they're on the census data, once you have language minorities, now all these things happen and you have to get pre-approval. So it's it's really insidious and scary because I'm gonna be honest with you. When I first saw it, I'm like, is this much to do about nothing? But after a few hours of really digging into it, I hate to say this, I kind of come to the same conclusion as Mitch. And let's take a look at this. Here, share screen. Okay, that didn't work. Let's try that again. Mitch McConnell. There we go. Sorry, guys. This is the beauty of live television.
Absolutely.
Supporting the John Lewis voting rights bill that Manchin and Murkowski have backed as an alternative to S1?
Well, as the majority leader said, the voting rights bill is intact. The law extends well into the future. What this rewrite of it does is grant to the Justice Department almost total ability to determine the voting systems of every state in America, which they're trying to do directly through H.R. 1. They would try to achieve indirectly through this rewrite of the Voting Rights Act. The Supreme Court did not strike down the Voting Rights Act. It's still the law. What they struck down was the pre-clearance part of it that applied only to the southern part of the United States because the Supreme Court concluded the conditions that existed in 1965 no longer existed. So there's no threat to the voting rights law. It's against the law to discriminate in voting on the basis of race already. And so I think it's unnecessary.
I have to agree with Mitch on that one.
I have to agree with him as well, but the unnecessary part depends on a person's perspective. If you're trying to ensure a team blue forever, this is a great way to do it because that's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, it is a beautiful long game play. I got to salute them for
they play the game well. They understand the machine.
And if you look at because one of the things that like I've said before, the Heritage Foundation is ranked state of Tennessee #1 on voting. And I think ours is beautiful. I love it. It's incredibly simple. It's incredibly efficient. It's incredibly locked down. So that's all great. But the problem is it's not everywhere is like that, right? So they could dumb down Tennessee's and change another one. So we're all going to have to be playing some even playing field game that's only good to the DOJ, which is not the way I think our framers intended to give that much power to one unelected official, especially in regards to our elections. Once you have the keys to elections, my friend, you got the keys to the kingdom.
Absolutely. And let's look at how this is trending. We've got J-Dog in charge of the Federal Reserve, unelected official, in charge of really our monetary system and much of our economy in the big game, right? Now we could have unelected officials in charge of all the elections. And let's tie this in with the southern border. We all know about the problems that are happening down there. These people are coming across and they're getting coached up by NGOs on how to seek asylum and who to vote for afterwards and who made this all happen. Now, are they naive?
And that's not tinfoil hat, man.
That is out there.
Okay. 100%.
And so Team Blue's doing a good job here setting up a long game of they will control everything.
Let's talk about one final thing, and that's voter identification. Because when you look at the John Lewis Voter Rights Act law, when it comes to voter identification, it says they're going to use the same voter ID framing as some other act. So I had to go and look at that. It's just a damn spider web. You know what I'm saying? When you start pulling this thread, it's like, wait a minute, over here, what is that? And it was like, if you don't have a photo ID, you can just show cracks me up. You can show like a bill,
like a utility bill.
Yeah, utility bill. But
Yeah.
I mean, a Xerox copy and fold that thing up
Yeah.
and hand it to a poll worker. And here's the other more insidious thing. If this act gets signed into law next year by a democratically controlled Senate,
Mm-hmm.
no changes can ever be made to voter ID ever, full stop, never. So if we come along with anything else and says, well, this is a better idea, let's voter ID for everybody.
Mhm.
Nope. It is codified into law now. So
Wow. Which
yeah,
would take another act of Congress, right?
yeah.
Or perhaps a SCOTUS decision. But neither one of those is going to be easy to get, especially if under census data these folks are allowed to vote. How do you change the levers of power there?
And that's a great point, man, because you said, they'd be hard to get. So going back to Shelby v. Holder, two lower courts struck it down and said,
Mhm.
no, what they're doing is constitutional. And finally, the Supreme Court's like, what are you talking about?
Mhm.
So it's a long chain to get it up to the Supreme Court. It takes years and
Right.
years and a lot of money and
Mhm.
decades of this kind of stuff. So yeah, it could affect at least a generation before it got overturned. So
And during that generation, how many presidents would there be that would have how many nominees go to the Supreme Court?
yeah. And remember, we discussed this several weeks ago. There's like 679 immigration judges in the United States right now.
Mhm.
And they have, I think, over 30, correct me if it could be 30 million or 3 million. I don't remember, some insane number, right? And it
Mhm.
said it was going to take them until the Congressional Budget Office said it would take until 2032 to clear the docket if nothing else came on the docket.
Yeah.
So it's,
And the folks currently coming across the border being handed slips of paper with here's your date for the immigration judge for your asylum claim, and those dates are in the 2030s.
yeah. And meanwhile, and I've heard this, and I got it. Don't quote me on this. Don't soundbite me on this because I could be completely wrong. But I've heard we're giving these people like $2,200 a month to wait here. And meanwhile, the average pensioner in the United States
Mhm.
is drawing $1,200 on their Social Security.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes more sense to me to renounce my U.S. citizenship, go across the border, come back in, seek
Mhm.
asylum now,
Yep.
get my $2,200 a month. I mean, it's just,
It's funny you mentioned that. First, there's a gag order on immigration judges right now. They cannot speak publicly or to the press about what's going on. That's from the DOJ.
well, that's real
Okay.
America now, isn't it, buddy?
And no doubt, right?
Hmm.
The second thing is right now there's I believe he's a homeless guy from New York City who's traveling to the border, is going to cross
I saw
over
that.
and then come back illegally so he can get all the benefits. He's like, I'm better off being an illegal.
It's a genius.
Those are his words, not mine. Okay.
Yeah, I saw that. It's
So,
good.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, hey, don't hate the player, hate the game, right?
I know. It's brilliant.
So let's take us out on this one, brother. What's old Henry Hazlitt have to say here?
Old Henry says the whole gospel of Karl Marx can be summed up in a single sentence. Hate the man who is better off than you are. Never under any circumstances admit that his success may be due to his own efforts, to the production contribution he has made to the whole community. Always attribute his success to the exploitation, the cheating, the more or less open robbery of others. Never under any circumstances admit that your own failure may be owing to your own weakness, or that the failure of anyone else may be due to his own defects, his laziness, incompetency, improvidence, or
Mhm.
stupidity.
Wise words.
What a great thing to end on.
Yeah. That's
But yeah, you hear these things like the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and it's like, oh man, hey, I like, John Lewis, let's support that, right?
yeah.
But then when you dig into the details of it, you go, man, I swear to God, man, I really did go into it with an open mind as much as I could.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. I don't
cut
doubt that
into
one
this
bit.
thing. But it's like, wow, when you come out of it, you kind of like, because like McConnell said, love him or hate him, was like, hey, look, the Voting Rights Act is intact.
Mhm.
It is perfect, and we have shown that it's working. Nobody's saying it. All we don't want is that pre-approval process to be put on any state where they got to go to these unelected officials and beg to do things with their elections. I mean, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, let's bring this back around to. I mean, this is American Warrior Society. We like guns. We like shooting guns, right? You can get a concealed carry permit in New York City, right? There's like 57 steps to it, but you can get it. So no one's stopping you from doing that. But there's all these steps to the administrative state.
Right.
Could that maybe be a template for something? I mean, the whole kind of like if you have to defend yourself, the process is the punishment. Well, the process is the deterrence in this case.
Yeah.
So
That's a perfect place to end it, my friend. Take us out.
all right, guys, the fight's coming. Be ready.